Well, hello, this is Jeff Gaudiosi, and you're on misplacedstraws.com where music comes to life. And my guest today has been in this business for a long time, over 35 years now. We last spoke a little over a year ago when his band Enuff Z'nuff released a great record called Brainwash Generation, and he's back now with a brand new Enuff Z'nuff record of Beatles covers called Hardrock Nite. Please welcome the one and only Chip Z'nuff. Welcome, Chip.
Welcome to you. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to talk with me.
Oh, my pleasure. And from the first note of the classic Enuff Z'nuff debut record, I mean, straight through Brainwash Generation, you guys have proudly displayed your love for the Beatles and your music. And I think most fans are surprised that it took this long for a record like this to come out. But why this Beatles cover record now?
I think it's a good time, as good as ever. We were going through some difficult situations, unprecedented times in the last year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Gave us plenty of time to go in the studio and start recording. And after we finished up Brainwash Generation, we just basically found ourselves doing live streaming shows, Jeff.
Yep.
And we had plenty of time. Of course, I got my radio show. I stay busy with 6 days a week on the Monsters of Rock. But I knew that we needed something in the best interest of the fans and ourselves to keep us busy, and that would be making music. And instead of just sitting back on our laurels waiting for live streaming shows and perhaps the occasional weekend warrior gigs, it was a good idea to go in there and start experimenting what the next endeavor would be for Enuff Z'nuff. And it just so happens that Beatle record, I've been talking about it for years. I spoke with my guitar player, Tony Fennell. I said, I have an idea. We should do perhaps a record doing nothing but our influences. And that would be one of the biggest ones would be the Beatles. And I looked through social media, obviously, and talked to a lot of people. And I don't think any band has ever put out a whole Beatle record, ever.
Yeah.
And in the early days, Enuff Z'nuff, we'd play Beatles songs in our set. Not a lot, but we'd throw occasional Revolution in. In the early days, we threw Dear Prudence in the set because at that time, MTV was playing our videos, so we were mostly focusing on what was on our records.
Right.
So I first song I recorded was Cold Turkey off the John Lennon Shaved Fish record. And it sounded fabulous. When we finished up, we're like, this is something that's special right here. Let's continue and keep recording songs. And we just went through the catalog and we picked nothing except for stuff from 67 and above, which I thought was important. We could always go back if there was ever going to be another record where we come up with Beatles songs. There's plenty of material there for the rest of our careers, but we're not a cover band. We're not a tribute band, but I look at this record as paying respect to our forebears. Beatles were very important to us. And I thought doing a Beatle record, but on 10, Marshall amplifiers and Mason Boogie amps and big drums and big bass guitar, that could be something that is very good for the palate. And that's exactly what we did. We started recording one song at a time. It's all you do in the studio. That's the special thing about making records. And when we finished up, we had about 15, 16, maybe 17 songs. And then we just chopped it down to our favorite 10. And I think we have a juggernaut of an album right here. And I'm looking forward to going out, not only putting this album out and having the fans here that don't know Beatles hearing these songs, but perhaps going out and touring around the country and supporting this record in a way that's super unique, where we can do the Enuff Z'nuff catalog and we also play that Beatle record. You get a double bang for your buck.
Yeah, and it's funny because you mentioned how the idea begins with you want to do a record of your influences, and this record starts off with Magical Mystery Tour, which was famously covered by another one of your big influences, Cheap Trick. Is that song kind of a nod to both bands?
Well, Cheap Trick, I can't say enough about those cats. They're big fans. I've always loved that band. Good friends of mine as well. We played shows in the early days. We used to do a lot of gigs with Cheap Trick. And perhaps because of our behavior, that stopped. You can't be around them for too long without getting in any trouble. The propensity to get in trouble at any single moment of the day. But a big influence, Cheap Trick from the early days till now. The new record's fantastic, by the way. And I do a lot of work with Dax Nielsen. He plays on a lot of Enuff Z'nuff records as well. But there's other bands that out there that have also covered the Beatles. I know Helter Skelter, Motley Crue.
Of course, yeah.
Styx recorded a Beatles song. I think there's a Stone Temple Pilots did Revolution. We weren't looking at those bands, to be honest with you. Actually, when we finished the record, it was brought to my attention that, well, if you put Cheap Trick and Stone Temple Pilots in an alley and let them fight, and I came in and broke it up, that would be the new Enuff Z'nuff album of Beatles songs. But no, the influences here were strictly looking at the Beatles, John, Paul, George, and Ringo, what they've accomplished, taking the songs that they've recorded that were timeless beyond belief, and just play them as aggressive as possible. That was it. Try to keep the arrangements real similar. Don't have the same production values, obviously, because that was a long time ago when they recorded those records. But we did go back and pillage some of those ideas as far as the equipment wise that we used. It's all analog. Everything's on 2-inch tape. Nothing was Pro Tool to death. We didn't want to do that. There's no auto tune or anything. So if you hear anything that sounds a little questionable, guess what? That's me singing. That's how the band plays. And I think that's the beauty of the record. It was just a nice organic rock record. But we went back and did a few little things analog wise, plugged into certain equipment and used certain microphones to get the sounds that we needed. But we wanted to make sure that we could reproduce these songs live in concert as well. And we didn't want to overdub. We didn't want to do too many overdubs and muck up what originally was recorded. Those songs, I'll tell you, to this day, even the fans that don't know Beatles, they'll be pleasant. If you like rock and roll music, you'll be pleasantly surprised at what we have right here. A real rock record for the 21st century.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because that's exactly what I was thinking as I'm listening to this. Is you brought it down to the pure song. These are just straight ahead rock arrangements of these songs. And, you talked about that it's, the post 67 stuff, but it's recorded almost like the early Beatles stuff, where it's just the guitars and the amps without the production stuff. So it's almost like you're taking the best of both eras of the Beatles and putting them into your versions of these songs.
Yeah, I mentioned it to somebody recently. I was back in the 90s. Enuff Z'nuff was out on tour with Foreigner and Alice Cooper, The Fix, Billy Squire. We were doing some festival gigs. It was during our second album, Strength. And I got a chance to hang out with Mick Jones from Foreigner, wonderful singer, songwriter, producer. And he went back to the hotel with me at the end of the show with some fans. And we were just hanging out, talking fodder and about bands like Cheap Trick and Queen and Mott the Hoople and the old English scene. And he mentioned to me, he goes, how I learned how to write songs? I said, no, what'd you do? You just listen to other bands' records? He goes, no, I spent 6 months in the studio with the Beatles, with George Martin and the guys where they were recording and writing songs and making records. Like, you got to be kidding me. How incredible was that? I go, were they getting high and partying the whole time? And he says, no. The focus and the task at hand was to make a great record. And he goes, we snuck in the closet a few times and had a couple of puffs on some pot, but that's about it. And there would be the band in the studio and they play at the same time. And I thought, what a fantastic idea. And I remember that conversation. And he said they'd go in and do some overdubs, of course, afterwards. But for the most part, it was the four guys in the room count off 1, 2, 3, 4 and play. And I think that was a wonderful story that he told me. And I used that later on this record, where we didn't try to muck it up too much. We just play together, minimal overdubs. And Torrey did a lot of stuff over it. Torrey Stoffregan, my guitar player, Torrey Harrison Stoffregan, say, because he's got a wonderful sense of balance on guitar. He did a few things over at his recording studio in Scituate, but most of it was done here in Blue Island and over at T-Ray Studios in Massachusetts. And then we just took the record after we had all the parts ready to go, and we had it mixed over at a place called Stonecutter Studio with a guy named Chris Steinmans, who's responsible for Kiss Revenge. He did Alice Cooper stuff, worked with Styx and a plethora of rock bands. And he was able to take this record and bring it to the next level with his sound, solid mixes, pulling out Leslie amplifiers and special mics and reamp and stuff. And it was absolutely fantastic. When it was all said and done, I said, we got a rock record here. Let's go out and play.
That's for sure. And and it's funny, like I said, as a huge Beatles fan myself, digging through the track list, you have plenty of Paul and John, and you even get into some solo stuff. We talk Cold Turkey, Live and Let Die. Great call on Jet, by the way. That's one of my favorite post-Beatle Paul songs. So you guys really kill it on that.
Thanks.
And you get Ringo in there with a little help from my friends, but no George vocal on this record.
Maybe perhaps we'll say that for next one. A lot of George guitar parts, though.
There you go.
A lot of beautiful solos and a lot of good harmonies. Yeah. That's for sure. So yeah, George is in there too. But no, we focused on the songs that we felt fit the record chronologically, and of course, a little help from my friends. That's more of a nod to Joe Cocker. I mean, that was his version. Fantastic. I've always loved Joe Cocker's voice. Bad Dogs and Englishmen, one of my favorite bands when I was growing up as a kid.
Yeah.
And Chet, that was Paul and Linda and Paul McCartney in the Wings days. And I thought that's going to be the first single, by the way.
Oh, great.
Which I thought was a great one for radio because it was a smash hit back then. And I remember Clive Davis saying to me, Chip, if it's 20 years old, it's new again. Well, this is 50 years old. And hopefully people will embrace it. A lot of fans out there, a lot of the younger generation is going to think it's an Enuff Z'nuff song. It really is.
Well, I mean,
it's quite challenging.
It's a perfect pop song, and it fits your wheelhouse great. I mean, I was excited when I saw it on the track list, and then when I listened to it, for me, that's the highlight of the record.
Yeah, well, to me, Eleanor Rigby is one of the highlights for me. That's a track you wouldn't think you'd hear big guitars and drums on, because a lot of strings. That George Martin produced track that is absolutely incendiary, and that was a great idea. My guitar player, Tony Fennell, who used to sing in a band called Ultravox, he's got a lot of great qualities when it comes to melody lines and arrangements. And I thought that on that track right there, that was something that no one's ever taken a chance on. And I like taking chances. I like the challenge out there of playing these songs, especially going in the studio and laying them down there. In the old days, we'd be over at Royal Recorders in Lake Geneva or A&M Studios in LA, one-on-one, perhaps over at Music Grinder, wonderful studios, but always had a propensity to get in trouble at any single moment. On this record, at our age right now, really the task at hand was, coming up with great performances. That's what a producer's job is, and that's what we thought from the very beginning. Let's just try to nail these songs the best we can with minimal production. And I believe that Live and Let Die was another tough one right there because that's already been covered by Guns N' Roses. As a matter of fact, Paul McCartney said his kids went to go see Guns N' Roses, and when they came back, Paul said, "Yeah, so how'd you guys like the show?" And they go, "Oh, Dad, it was fantastic. The band was great, and they played Live and Let Die." And Paul says, "Well, I wrote that song." And they go, "Yeah, sure, Dad." And they went to bed. I thought it's pretty interesting. So that was a challenge out there because then he tried to sing anything that Axl Rose does. He's a quintessential singer of our generation. But I think we nailed it. And if you listen to the record, it sounds like Enuff Z'nuff a little bit, obviously. So I don't think we strayed too far from what we were trying to accomplish.
And on Eleanor Rigby, is that all guitar in the background? The string line that where the Beatles used the strings, is that all guitar playing that?
Yeah, it certainly is. That's Tony Fennell playing that riff along with me. I thought it should be incorporated in the song when we first recorded it. That wasn't in there, and Tony and I sat down and just played the parts and tried to turn it into a keyboard part, obviously. But it's all guitars.
Yeah, that's cool. It sounds really cool.
Thank you.
And on the last record, Brainwashed Generation, you had the track Strangers in My Head that featured former frontman Donnie V. And, for a long time, especially at the beginning there, I mean, you and Donnie were sort of, power pop's answer to Paul and John when you guys were starting in the 80s. Did you think at all of reaching out on this record, or were you just keeping it in-house with the four guys?
Yeah, he's doing solo records, and I'm keeping the Enuff Z'nuff name out there. I thought it was a good idea. There was no reason. I mean, no one could sing those songs like he could, by the way.
Yeah.
Sounds just like John, sounds just like Paul. He grew up as a little kid doing that kind of Beatles stuff. So you're not going to match that. But no, the band as is right now, Tony Fennell, Tori Stoff Reagan, Dania Benjamin Hill, and myself, that's Enuff Z'nuff right now. Yep. And it has been like that for the last 8 years. when we did Brainwash Generation, I thought it was a nice idea. We both talked about him coming up and doing a track with us. He brought the song to me. He sent me a bunch of them. I thought that was the strongest one that would fit the record. And that Brainwash Generation, solid rock record, I think, came out at a strange time during this whole shutdown. But the fans have spoken. They love the record. It was a nice gesture to not only our constituents and fans, but to ourselves to cleanse our soul. And that led to the next record deal that we have with Cleopatra, where we've signed with them, putting out the old catalog. So all the albums will be released correctly on CD and on vinyl. I think that's the best way to go. Him and I talked about it, maybe perhaps doing something in Japan, maybe where it's a great market for us, but he's not interested in doing what Enuff Z'nuff would do right now, and that's why he left a long time ago. We get in a van, bro. We're not even in tour buses anymore. It's in a van, 15-seat passenger van. We throw the equipment in the back and we go out with Ace Frehley or Tesla or perhaps Jack Russell's Great White or a Cheap Trick. Whoever's out there is playing shows. We do it down and dirty like the old days, and I don't think that he wears that dress well. He wouldn't be comfortable with that. But certainly a nice nod to him on this record too, because he's a huge Beatles fan. We both are.
And playing live, I know you guys got some shows coming up, and hopefully we'll see a lot more in 2022. I mean, there's a lot that you guys could do now. I mean, you talked earlier about presenting these songs, doing a Beatles set maybe during the show. This is also the 30th anniversary of your second album, Strength, which, the first record, sort of the classic, but I think for fans, Strength is the favorite. Have you thought about kind of incorporating maybe the anniversary of Strength or how you're going to present these Beatles songs?
I think we could do both, to be honest with you. There's no room to probably play both albums in its entirety because our sets are usually an hour and a half long. And on the last tour we just did, which was in June and July and August of this year, we were out with Faster Pussycat on the Straight Outta Quarantine tour. And trust me, it was jam-packed every night. And we weren't playing sheds and arenas, Jeff. We were doing large clubs and small theaters, but they were all sold out. The fans have spoken. They love the bands. And on that show,
oh, I think you muted yourself, Chip. There you go.
Yeah, sorry about that. I believe that was what we needed to do at that time. The fans want to hear the early records, and we mix it in with some of this later material that we've done. But we've also incorporated a couple Beatles songs in this set as well, just to see how it would react and let the promoters know that there's an album coming down the pipeline. So now that I see that, we'll readjust, and perhaps we have, I think, maybe a dozen shows for the rest of the year. And then next year is when we're going to embark on a major tour. It's going to be 4 bands. I think it starts sometime in March. I'll be also out with Missing Persons and Bow Wow Wow and One in Rome. So it won't be a tour with, a bunch of, it won't be a metal tour or a hard rock tour. It'll just be a tour celebrate music like it used to be in the old days when I would go see Queen and you would see Bebop Deluxe opening for them, or you go see, and I seen Black Sabbath and the Ramones were opening. Totally different bands. I think it's going to get back to that where it's going to be consolidation, where you're going to see different bands playing together, and the fans get a bang for their buck. And on that tour, you'll see us mixing it up. Maybe some shows will be all Beatles songs with a couple of the hits that we've had, or perhaps it'll be all Enuff Z'nuff songs and a few Beatles songs. We'll see how it goes and what's there to offer at that time and how much we'll get to play every single night. All I know is the fans will be blown away by it, to get a chance to see a band playing some cover songs in the set. Never heard anybody. I've seen Cheap Trick, Alice Cooper, Queen. They all do cover songs in their set. There's nothing wrong with that at all. As a matter of fact, it's a nod to their fans and to their favorite bands. So what to expect next year? Expect the unexpected.
Well, we've been spending some time here with Chip Z'nuff. The record's called Hardrock Nite. It's out everywhere on November 5th. A great collection of Beatles songs, as well as some solo John and Paul and Chip. Can't thank you enough again. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Hopefully we catch you up here in the Northeast, around the Connecticut area when you come by with the tour in the spring. And just thanks so much for taking the time.
I appreciate you talking to me as well. Quick shout out to our military, our doctors, our police,
Of
our
course.
nurses, our firemen, everybody on the front lines that help us, our truck drivers that get all this stuff to the stores for us. Everybody that helps move things forward for us. I wish everybody good health out there as well. Have a great holiday season, and I'll see everyone next year on tour.
Amen, brother. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yep. Bye.